Hi, welcome to our podcast. Today, we dive into the effects that a conflict can have on an individual's well-being and the societal fallout that conflicts can bring. We analyze scholarly sources and interview former war veterans, while also providing our own commentary and opinions in regard to this topic. Our discussion is inspired by the novel Catch-22.
Catch-22 is written by Joseph Heller and is a story following a soldier fighting in Italy during World War II. The soldier's name is Yozarian, and he constantly tries various methods of being pulled out of duty. However, these attempts are always blocked by Catch-22, which is a paradoxical situation. These situations promote the devaluation of human life by Yozarian's superiors.
From the plot of the book, we decided that an overarching theme was the devaluation of human lives becoming the social norm as conflict and egocentric behavior takes place. After discussion, it became clear that the fictional novel was written with the intentions of informing an audience about the devastating effects that war can have on a population.
This was mainly seen by the way the main character Yosarian and the other soldiers feel as though they are simply pawns in the games of their superiors due to the way that they are forced into cruel conditions and are expected to have complete submission to the wantings of the generals.
One example of this comes in the beginning of the novel when the author writes, "Orr was crazy and could be grounded. All he had to do was ask, and as soon as he did, he would no longer be crazy and would have to fly more missions. If he flew them, he was crazy and didn't have to, but if he didn't want to, he was sane and had to." This excerpt from Catch-22 shows how when given an opportunity for power, the captains chose to put others' lives at risk for their own personal gain and receive promotion. And on top of that, since there were so many rules holding people back from getting discharged, once drafted or enlisted, the soldiers no longer had any control over their life. All in all, they were forced to fight all the way up until their death.
Another example comes as the author writes about Yozarian's thoughts as his friend dies in his arms. Man was matter. That was Snowden's secret. Drop him out of a window and he'll fall. Bury him and he'll rot, like any other kind of garbage. This quote shows exactly how conflict can devalue human lives. One of Yozarian's best friends was dying in his arms. Yet Yozarian wasn't thinking about how he was losing his friend forever. He was thinking about how humans are just matter. He literally compared humans to garbage. In his mind, there was no difference because we were both matter. This horrible situation that these men were thrown into desensitized their ideas of a living human being down to nothing. Even as Yozarian lost his best friend, he made him an object of no importance.
Now, moving on from the events in the book, we also interviewed military veterans. The following quotes are from a Vietnam War veteran, whose name is Mr. Crow, and a World War II veteran during the Japanese invasion of the Philippines, whose name is Mr. Reyes. We will begin with the responses of Mr. Crow. We asked him, "Did the war have any lasting effects on you or the people you went to war with?"
His response, "Yes. I don't like talking about it, and haven't until a couple years ago. That war still gives me nightmares. But the reality of it is, you don't go on a 10-man mission and return with the 5 living, carrying the 5 dead back, and not have some sort of PTSD. Just like we saw in Catch-22, once the men were drafted, they had no say in the outcome of their lives. Let's see what Mr. Reyes has to say. We asked him, "Did you ever see your enemy as less than human as a result of the war?"
Mr. Reyes responded with, "Sometimes yes. There was a lot of propaganda against the Japanese that was posted everywhere. It got to the point where even children were taught at a young age that the enemy were okay to kill, the same way you might kill a housefly because it's annoying. It seemed like nobody from either side could see the enemy for anything less than a target."
And lastly, we asked, "What changes did you wish would happen to make the war more humane?"
Mr. Reyes said, "I don't think there's any way for a war to be humane if there are humans on the front lines dying. It doesn't make sense. There are many other ways war could be settled besides fighting and losing lives."
Overall, it's clear that there are a number of lessons to be taken from the novel. We see examples of the effect of war on those involved all the time on the news, and we hear stories about it all the time.
I feel like this idea of human lives becoming devalued is so commonly seen in the presence of a conflict because it is almost necessary to survive that situation. You can't see the people around you anything more than matter because you have to be able to lose them in a horrifying way and move on.
Even as we were doing research and talking to people about their experiences, there was a clear disconnect in the sense that the people talking about it didn't feel very comfortable reminiscing on their experiences, which probably comes from the fact that these people became someone and something that they weren't. The only way to fight the enemy was to not see the enemy as human, and devaluing humans and then coming back to society where humans are valued is a huge change that most definitely harms the minds of these people.
This overarching idea can break its way into society as well. One piece of evidence that we took a close look at was one written by Joanna Crosby, and it analyzed the social unrest in the aftermath of the Baltimore shooting that killed an unarmed African-American man. It's just an example of this huge theme that we generally see in wars and large-scale conflicts being applied into the streets of our communities.
From both the plot of the book and the interviews conducted, it is clear that devaluation of human lives becomes the social norm as conflict and egocentric behavior takes place. Additionally, we discover the terrible lasting effects on those that are fighting the war, even decades after the war has ended. So therefore, as world citizens, it is our job to ensure the mental and physical safety of everyone, which can only be accomplished by the abolition of war and introduction of more humane ways of solving problems. Thanks for listening.